All right, hello everybody. So we're going to look at decision-making matrices, DMM, and this is the second prerequisite for a good PDR. So again, PDR, we had an acronym: provide, decide, reassure. So DMM, your decision-making matrix, is the topic for today's video, and we're looking at decide specifically on how decision-making matrix will lead to you deciding on design choices. So a DMM is a tool that will help you make decisions with quantitative metrics. Now, if you do this correctly, it should always be objective, so your audience should agree with your outcome. Let's talk about scoring. As we said in the PCC, your weights need to sum to 1. Unfortunately, I see this as a common mistake almost every year. I don't know why, but it just happens. Okay, but that's not going to be you. You also need quantifiable metrics. Okay, so this is going to eliminate subjectivity. Like, well, a Likert scale on, say, 1 to 5, I mean, that's kind of subjective, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. You also don't want to have bias. So when you have a quantifiable metric, you eliminate any of your own bias. And when you do that, you're going to be more objective naturally. And this is also going to increase your audience confidence and agreement with your DMM's conclusion and outcome. So now let's look at the Likert scales, right? So this kind of looks like it's an objective thing, but it's actually really subjective behind the scenes. So why is that? Well, generally, if you avoid Likert scales, it increases the quality of your decision-making matrix. So the audience should agree with your DMM, and it's supposed to be pretty objective, as I said before. Now, what are some reasons that might happen if your audience doesn't agree with your DMM? Well, you might have subjective metrics like a Likert scale. So why they might not agree with you is, for example, if you're saying like on a scale of 1 to 5, you think this is a good criteria, like you think that Toys R Us is the best store on a scale of 1 to 5, you say 5 out of 5. But if you ask me, I might say 4. So it's kind of subjective. It kind of depends on who you're asking. Maybe I like Target, or maybe someone else likes Kmart more, right? So it kind of depends. So you don't want things like that. And so the audience could easily attack your Likert scales if you put in here. So don't put your Likert scales in your DMM. Another reason is your scores and weights might not be computed correctly. Like, do they sum to 1? Do you multiply correctly? All those little things are going to add up, and then the audience is going to not trust you if you don't do the math correctly. Another reason is it a close race? We're going to look at this a little bit more closely in an example a little bit later. But for me, in my opinion, your clear winner means you have a score or difference greater than 2. So if you're a clear winner, or if your winner is winning by only 1.9 or 1 or 0.5, it's less than 2, it's not a close race. I mean, it's a close race. So it's like if you just change a little bit of the weights, then maybe another option's going to win. So in that case, it's not convincing to the audience. Like, yes, we agree that we like your outcome of your DMM. Another reason the audience might not agree with your DMM is your criterions might not be weighed correctly. So let's say you're going to go out to the store and you want to buy peanut butter, but you don't have a lot of money. You got a limited budget, and therefore your cost should be weighed more than, say, like the popularity of a brand name, right? Okay, next, let's look at the weighting. So relative weighting helps a lot. And this is a huge secret that didn't really develop or see until just last year. Now, the reason you want to have relative weighting is because all your different options will compete and fight against each other, which is the best among them, not anybody else outside the DMM, which is extremely important. Everything outside the DMM doesn't matter. Only the options that are fighting against each other matter the most. So if you don't have relative weighting, what actually happens is you have absolute weighting, and it doesn't always scale very well when you look at your other options. So you have two options for relative weighting. So the first one is if you want the criteria to be favoring the low values, this is the formula. You want to do 1 minus the current magnitude minus the lowest magnitude, and you divide by the highest magnitude minus the lowest magnitude. Or CM for current magnitude, LM for lowest magnitude, HM for highest magnitude. This looks a little confusing. When we look at our example, this would be a little bit more obvious. Or the other option for relative weighting is, of course, the high value. So if you want the criteria to weigh the higher value, then you just ignore the 1 minus and you keep the fraction the same. Now, as another side bonus or inside secret, you can also include a factor of 10 to these two equations so you can increase the scaling of the results. And so I usually like to do that. Okay, so here's all the secret tips on just one quick slide. So remember, if you do a DMM correctly, it's going to be objective, so your audience should usually agree with your decision. So their conclusion, whatever your conclusion is, they should generally be like, yep, I agree. It's hard to argue against it because it's purely objective. Make sure weight sum to one. Again, this is a common mistake. It seems really kind of obvious, like why would you not do that correctly? But it does happen, so just double check your math. Make sure you have quantifiable metrics. Don't have your Likert scales, number 5 there. And number 4, it's this subjective-ish thing, but really it's not. It's just subjective behind the scenes. So if you don't include your Likert scales, increase the quality of your DMM, it's harder for your audience to argue against your conclusion. And generally, they should agree with you because it's supposed to be purely objective. I'm restating that a little bit different from number 1. And we also said that having 3 to 5 criteria is pretty good. If you have too many or too less, it can cause some problems in your weighting. And finally, having relative weights helps as the different options in your DMM battle against each other as they determine who's the best among them. Okay, so thanks for listening. That's all for this video, and good luck on your DMMs. In the next video, we're going to look at a specific example of how to do this in practice.